This is the heart of the Laurel Woods region, valued mostly for its water supply. Water that enriches the soil out of a watershed that must be protected from fire to provide pure, sparkling water for surrounding towns. The Laurel Woods region must be safeguarded for other reasons. Its recreational facilities. Laurel Lake is known throughout the state for its water sports. Its many opportunities for relaxation. People come to Laurel from near and far, not only from this, but many of the northeastern states. Once in Laurel Woods, they lose contact with urban life and go forth to meet nature in all her beauty. A popular hike is up the slope from the lake to Pole Ridge, a ridge that figured prominently in American history. For generations ago, this rock barrier played a vital part in determining the outcome of a great battle. Naturally, many people have built their homes in a setting so beautiful, offering so many attractions. These summer cottages, almost hidden in groves of oak and maple, dot the countryside. This is the Laurel Woods region from the air. There is Laurel Lake, Pole Ridge, Davis Road that winds around Laurel Lake, and Stewart Road about 1/4 of a mile behind the ridge. On a morning early in October, the DeWitt family was preparing to close its cottage for the season. Trash that had been accumulated was being burned in the yard under the watchful eye of Mr. DeWitt. However, about 11 o'clock, anxious to avoid heavy traffic, the family left. With some embers still smoldering in the burned trash. By 1 o'clock, under a hot sun and a strong breeze, the fire had gained considerable headway. At 1:30, having received the alarm, the local fire warden and his crew reached the ridge overlooking the region. He made a quick survey, noted that the head of the fire was moving up the steep slope in heavy fuel toward Pole Ridge, that the wind was southeast, blowing at about 6 to 8 miles an hour. In planning the line location, Warden Grimes considered the basic factors influencing almost all firefighting tactics: rate and direction of wind and fire spread, type of fuel, availability of natural barriers. Quickly, the crew went around Laurel Lake, soon reached the base of the slope leading up to Pole Ridge. Here, fire headquarters was set up. Under the supervision of a straw boss designated by Warden Grimes, the tools were distributed, while the warden took off to make a preliminary reconnaissance of the fire. Having returned from his survey, Warden Grimes described to the men his attack action. His tactics were simple, based on existing burning conditions and the small crew at hand. Here was the fire with the direction of the wind southeast. The head was moving rapidly toward Pole Ridge. Here at Point 1 was fire headquarters. Since the fire was headed toward the ridge, Warden Grimes planned to start his fire line at Pole Ridge, thus taking advantage of this natural barrier. So the crew would move to Point 2 to begin building the line. There were just too few men in this first crew to work both sides of the fire at once. Note that in moving to the location, the men maintained a pace that would save their strength spaced about 8 to 10 feet apart, with the tools carried safely, sharp edge to the ground. Note also the distribution of the tools among the 9 members of the crew. The warden, equipped with an axe, acted as line locator, but the brush hook was the lead tool. Then 6 men, each with a fire rake, one of whom was also equipped with fusees. Finally, 2 spray tanks. Once again, for this 9-man crew, the tool distribution was axe, brush hook, 6 fire rakes, fusees, 2 spray tanks. As the crew climbed the slope, Warden Grimes continued to scout the fire and its behavior. Approaching the head of the fire, he rechecked its direction and rate of spread as it advanced rapidly upslope with the wind. But an experienced fire warden takes into consideration not only existing conditions, but also prepares beforehand for any change in weather that may occur. The fire might be confined on this end of the ridge, but what if the wind shifted and it escaped around the opposite end? Obviously, more men were needed because ahead lay miles of timber with only Stewart Road, a narrow dirt road, as a barrier. Meeting the crew at the base of Pole Ridge, the warden dispatched the truck driver to the nearest farmhouse to put in an urgent call for additional help. A progressive method of line construction was used, in which each man took only 1 or 2 licks before moving on, a procedure for rapid line construction sometimes called the modified 1-lick method. The line was located only far enough away from the fire to permit sufficient time for line construction. The warden acting as line locator, with the men spaced behind him from 6 to 10 feet apart. First, the line building tools. The brush hook, the lead tool, removing brush and saplings. Then the fire rakes, building the line down to mineral soil. Next, the torchman, setting a line fire that will burn out all fuel between the line and main fire. Finally, the patrolmen, guarding against spot fires and fire crossing the line. Where there were snags and heavy fuel, such as fallen timber or stumps, the warden located the line around them in order to exclude them from the fire area. At times, turning over the line location to his assistant, the brush hook man, the warden checked on the burning out and the line patrol. It was 2:30 when the truck driver made contact with the district warden, Jim Hegan, in Fairfield County, 30 miles away. Hegan promised to have a local warden and his crew at Laurel Woods within the half hour. On his wall map, the district warden marked the location of the fire. Before setting out himself, he called a local warden whose farm was located within 10 miles of Laurel Woods. Meanwhile, the crew was continuing its line construction, building a clean line down to mineral soil. the width of the line never wider than necessary, controlled by the amount and type of fuel. Dead material, logs and branches, were disposed of. Leaves and other litter were raked away from the fire. Note that the fire line was producing results, with the main fire and the line fire pulling together. By this time, Warden Grimes and his crew were midway down the slope. Good line-building measures were followed. Aware of the danger of spot fires, the warden had assigned a rakeman to patrol and improvement of the line. All fire crossing the line was immediately attended to by careful patrol action. To conserve the supply of water, it was used only when necessary. Now and then, under the warden's direction, the men took a break. Warden Grimes conserved the strength of his men, for exhausted firefighters have little value on the fire line. But now, aided by a varying wind, a new head of the fire was developing on the east side of the slope. It was now 3 o'clock. The new crew, a local warden and 5 men, arrived and reported to Warden Grimes, having first made contact with the truck driver at fire headquarters. Alarmed at the change in the wind, Warden Grimes, as fire boss, instructed several members of his own crew, as well as the new crew, to move with him to the east side of Pole Ridge. There he could scout the fire and take any necessary control action. The remainder of Warden Grimes's crew was left under the supervision of his assistant. But the damage had already been done. The wind had now shifted definitely to southwest, blowing about 10 miles an hour. The new head of the fire was moving over the crest onto the flat on the east side of the ridge. By the time the crew arrived, the fire was out into the open woods. A messenger was dispatched to inform the straw boss of the breakthrough. The fire line had been built almost to the point of the fire's origin by the time he reached the crew, a clean, well-built line with all fuel cleared away from the line. But now, due to the change in the situation, a change in tactics was demanded. The messenger relayed instructions from Warden Grimes to have 3 of the 5 men meet him on Stewart Road, leaving 2 men for patrol and mop-up. The fire could be held along Stewart Road, with each flank protected by a fire line. Here was Warden Grimes's plan. Along Stewart Road, a fire would be set to clear away all fuel before the main fire. Along each flank, a fire line would be built to confine the main fire. The 2 men left behind for mop-up and control on the completed line remained on the alert for burning sparks and embers crossing the line, cooling down burning fuels, catching spot fires, maintaining a continuous patrol. The balance of the crew had by now reached Stewart Road, there joining forces with the second crew and the fire boss. The truck driver, meanwhile, had set up road markers indicating the location of the new fire headquarters on Stewart Road. 2 men were immediately set to starting the backfire along the side of Stewart Road that faced the main fire, a counterfire that would burn out all fuels so that when the main fire and the backfire met, they would die out for lack of fuel. The remainder of the crew was stationed up and down Stewart Road, to maintain a guard against spot fires and hot fire crossing the road when the head and back fire met. As they waited, finally the flare-up came. Three men were left on Stewart Road for patrol action, paying particular attention to the lower flank of the fire. The rest of the crew then began line construction on the high side of the fire, for fire on an upslope will always burn faster. The wardens provided constant supervision of line building activities. In this lighter timber, note the reorganization of the merged crews. First, the line locator, then 2 brush hooks, 4 rakes, 1 torchman, and 2 tankmen, illustrating the need for flexibility in the crew organization and tool distribution, the controlling factors usually being the individual fire's characteristics or rate of fire spread, the type of fuel, and size of crew. As line construction continued, the lack of a nearby water supply became an increasing problem, for the need to refill tanks at a creek almost half-mile walk through the woods was slowing down the progress of the patrol action. On the line, a man had suffered a burn, reported at once for first aid treatment, for each man had been impressed by the warden with the necessity of obtaining immediate attention for all injuries. It was then the district warden reached fire headquarters with the district fire truck, bringing as well additional men. The truck was equipped with a power pump and a 100-gallon tank of water. Now, from the truck, water could be quickly supplied for the backpack pumps, eliminating the delay caused by the walk to the creek. The former rate of progress for patrol action could be resumed. Toward dusk, with the aid of the newly arrived crew, the line clearing on the upsloped flank of the fire was completed. Four men were left for patrol and mop-up action, while time out was taken by the balance of the crew for rest and food. As fire boss, Warden Grimes was responsible not only for overall supervision of the men, but but also for their general welfare. Realizing the men would be kept at the fire location past at least one mealtime, he had provided for their needs, arranging with the truck driver to bring in sufficient food. Meanwhile, by radio, the district warden reported the overall fire condition to the nearest fire tower. Here was the situation by 6 p.m. The backfire from the natural barrier of Stewart Road had met the main fire. Line construction on the upslope flank of the main fire had been completed. There, too, the counterfire was destroying all fuel in the path of the main fire. Yet to be completed was the line on the free-burning side of the fire. Before resuming work, prepared for all contingencies, Warden Grimes distributed lights. Within the next hour, with the rate of progress sped up by the augmented crew, the line on the low flank of the fire was completed. Preliminary mop-up, of course, takes place throughout line construction. But now, final mop-up was begun. In final mop-up, both crew organization and tool distribution vary from that of line construction. For example, fire rakes are used to scrape fire out of logs, stumps, or burning snags, or to pull fire away from the burning edge. Logs or trees lying across the line are left for the crosscut saw or axe. The shovel is useful, putting out hot fire or fire from burning logs or stumps by mixing with mineral soil. The mattock is effective in digging out roots, stumps, or rotted smoldering logs. Finally, the backpack pump, always useful in mop-up to put out fire in snags, logs, stumps, or hot embers. With the fire well under control, the men started back to town. But several patrols had been left to guard the burned-out area throughout the night. The next morning, Warden Grimes and the district warden returned to check the fire area. Together, they reviewed some of the lessons of the fire. They both recognized that if there had been more men in the first crew, they could have been better prepared for the shift in the wind. They recalled the day's events. First, on encountering the fire. A thorough reconnaissance of the fire to determine the direction and rate of fire spread, the existence of natural barriers and location of the fire line. Establishing a fire headquarters. Being fully prepared for all contingencies with tools ready for use. Building a good line, a continuous, well-located, clean line built in the shortest possible time. Effective line firing, a complete burning out of the area between the line and the main fire. Continuous mop-up to eliminate all fire hazards, with patrol maintenance at danger points along the line until the fire is completely out. Maintenance of personnel safety throughout the fire, or even above the importance of extinguishing the fire comes the welfare of the men. Effective leadership, overall supervision of the men throughout the period of fire control. Strong cooperation, not only between local wardens and their crews, but also with the other units of the state organization, so that the fire can be hit quickly and powerfully, with every available resource, with the least possible damage to the forest. But of course, more important than all is fire prevention. For if the burning of the trash at the cottage had been properly attended to, the fire at Laurel Woods would never have started. After a thorough check, the fire was declared officially out. Today, these woods are visited by thousands who find joy in its countless opportunities for recreation, for relaxation, far from the cares of the outside world. For Laurel Woods represents the American forest, both private and public, nature's own setting, a world of timbered hillsides, sparkling water and wildlife, a world to guard against the ravages of fire.